You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, December 6th. The 49ers are preparing to host the Chicago Bears, a game that very well could be the most likely that they win from the remaining games. So we're going to talk about some of the favorable and unfavorable matchups for the 49ers in this matchup with my Friday co-host. Joining me once again, it's been a couple weeks, KP. How you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, it has been a long time. It feels like it's been years since the last time we were on here.
A lot has changed.
I went to Lambeau. I'll send you the picture afterwards. So I went to Lambeau with a bunch of my friends, or like a bunch of my buddies are Packers diehards, made a bet preseason that the 49ers would win. Coming into this game, had no idea Brandon Allen would be under center. So I have to walk around like the bars in Lambeau with this big dumb hat, just a Packers hat, obviously. Good times.
All right. Well, so I'm sure you enjoyed some of that game, some aspects of it, just being out there, because I've heard great things about Lambeau. But Dezi, who's joining us today to talk about injuries, she was also at last week's game in Buffalo. Dezi, how you doing? How was that game?
I'm finally thawed out, and KP, I definitely feel you. So I was deep in Bill's Mafia country, and I'm out there trying to break tables and stuff. So it was a whole experience. Freezing, like the snow just coming down. It's just incredible. But yeah, would have loved a W. But the cool thing is my podcast co-host was with me, and she's a big Bills fan. That was her first home Bills game.
Wow.
So as much as I love my Niners, and I would have loved the W, like it was really cool to be there with her in her element, loving her Bills and supporting a friend. So luckily I didn't have to wear any kind of Bills garb. So
yeah,
if I texted you that hat, by the way.
Let's see.
I need to see.
Oh my! It was one of those like mega hats, the one that Brian Robinson.
Oh wow!
Ordered that one time.
Yeah.
So there's.
Wow! I'm sorry.
Nice.
That's tough.
Nice. Yeah, you didn't look very happy about that.
Was not.
But glad to have both of you guys back. I hope you guys also enjoyed your Thanksgivings. This week, the 49ers, like I said, are preparing to play the Bears, and they're going to have to do it with a lot of players. So Trent Williams, he remains out. Jordan Mason is out. He's going to be placed on injured reserve at some point, I would imagine, in the next couple of days. Dre Greenlaw is making his way back, but he is going to be out, as Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch both mentioned. Most likely that Greenlaw will be back next week, Thursday night game against the Rams. George Odom is out. Nick Bosa is doubtful. So he's now missed a couple of games and probably will miss this one as well, I'd have to imagine. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles is questionable. Aaron Banks is still in the concussion protocol. He's questionable. Talanoa Hufanga making his way back from IR. Questionable in this game. That one is a bit of a surprise. But Dezi, the one that I want to ask you the most about is actually someone who's not on this list, and that is Brock Purdy, because he'd been dealing with the shoulder injury last week. As you saw, in Buffalo, in those conditions, it didn't look so great. He only threw the ball 18 times. So it was from the jump a run-heavy game plan, I think, and they didn't really stray away from that. So what did you kind of think of Brock, seeing him in that game, and how maybe the cold and or the shoulder impacted him?
Oh, man, this one's tough. Like, it's hard to get a gauge. We already know that he struggles in conditions like rain and, when the snow gets wet and all of that. It was coming down, especially in the second half. I mean, it was really coming down hard. So it was unfortunate. This whole season has been unfortunate. The interesting thing is, and for those of you that have followed my family story, my son is a javelin thrower, and he had the same injury that Brock Purdy had. He had the same surgery as Brock Purdy. He's now 3 months out. The one thing that my husband keeps stressing is he's got to continue to strengthen his shoulder, strengthen his shoulder, strengthen his shoulder. So we talk about the kinetic chain. The kinetic chain is the transference of energy from one joint to the next joint as you pass through a series of movement, right? So the ankle matters to the knee matters, the hip matters. That's the kinetic chain. For the arm and throwing, it's your hand, wrist, elbow, shoulder. So when you often have a shoulder injury, you can have some compensating movements that then affect the shoulder. So I am just interested to learn where is this really arising from? Was there an actual injury, like a tackle? I mean, he was doing a lot of running. He's doing some Superman movements. Did he injure it then? Or was this something that was sort of nagging from maybe some inflammation from the elbow? Because even prior to all of that movement, we saw him on the sideline with the warmer on, and people had made comments about that. So, it's interesting this is an interesting thing that I'm keeping my eye on. And of course, as we're heading into a contract year for Brock, it'd be interesting to see what is really the cause, and is this something that's going to resolve?
They've been very vague, right, about this injury, which usually that gives me concern. But of course, he was able to come back last week, so that is good. But obviously, he didn't look 100%, I think. Now, going into this week, he's a week further removed, right, from the injury, and also in much favorable conditions, back in Santa Clara. So would you expect that we see a version of Brock closer to the version that we're used to seeing?
I'm hopeful. I definitely think that this is the game that we need to be paying attention to. This will be the one that will tell us, okay, what does this really look like? Is this something that's just short term? If he looks sharper in this game, I'll be a lot more hopeful.
Right on. Okay. Well, Dezi, we have a lot of injuries to talk about, right? We can probably spend forever discussing them, but, want to be appreciative of your time. Thank you for joining us today to discuss the injuries. But yeah, me and KP will take it from here. Thanks, Dezi.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. All right, so KP, we've got quite a lot to discuss outside of the injuries as well, but obviously some of these injuries do make way for some unfavorable things for the 49ers. But just really quickly, I'll go over the Bears injury status report as well. Way more minimal than the 49ers. So they got a couple of questionable players dealing with quad injuries. DJ Moore, their wide receiver, and the running back DeAndre Swift, both questionable for this game. A couple players who are out, their offensive lineman Ryan Bates. Oh, that's a typo. Nice. Roschon Johnson, who's out, their second running back. And I believe there was another name who's out as well. So one of their DBs in this game I know is out. But for the Bears, I don't think any of these injuries are going to impact them too much, at least not as much as the 49ers. But what I want to start this episode with is kind of, as always, talking about the unfavorables. Before we do that, want to look at the Bears offense, right? This is an offense that, with Caleb Williams at the helm, there's a lot of changes, some growing pains. You got a lot of new pieces. DeAndre Swift, Rome Odunze, the other rookie, Keenan Allen. DJ Moore's been with Chicago a few years now, but again, working with a new quarterback, there's a lot of changes, right? The offensive line's not too bad, but Caleb Williams has been sacked the second most, I believe, of any quarterback besides Will Levis. So something to look out for in this game. But this is an offense that has been clicking a little bit better in recent weeks, with the Bears, firing their head coach last week. I got to imagine they're going to feel a little rejuvenated, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And historically in the NFL, the week after you get the best effort from a team that fires their coach. That's what the Jets were hoping for when they fired Robert Saleh. That's what you've seen in a couple other instances this year. I think the Saints had one of their best performances the week after they got rid of Dennis Allen. So the good news for the 49ers is at this point in the game, right, you can only change so much. You can only get so much more of an effort. The Bears have had issues. I'm not sure that that's going to change just because the head coach was fired at this point in the season. In my opinion, Chicago is Chicago at this point.
is true. Now, as far as the 49ers, I would say the 49ers are the 49ers, but I would also say, like, the last couple weeks, it's been hard to gauge their floor because, like, it kind of just keeps getting worse for the 49ers with the injuries. And I'm going to start with the first unfavorable here. They're looking themselves in the mirror. This 49ers defense has been pretty bad. It's been atrocious. I'd say the last couple weeks, especially without Nick Bosa. All season, they've struggled with third down defense, red zone defense, and as of late, definitely have struggled with the lack of turnovers, lack of pressure, rushing defense. So these are all things that on their own have been an issue, and I want to go through each one and how it could potentially impact them in this game. So starting with the third down defense, the 49ers defense ranks 26th in third down conversion rate allowed. The Bears offense the last 3 weeks, like I said, they've been looking better. They rank 6th in third down conversion rate in their last 3 games. So that's something the 49ers should be kind of careful with in this one.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think the biggest issue is allowing the Bears to gain yards. So the more that the game goes along, the better the Bears offense gets. Just from watching the Bears the past couple of games, it seems like Caleb Williams gets off to these sleepy starts, these slower starts. But the more he gets comfortable, the more he starts to recognize what the defense is doing to him, the better. Basically, the Bears start to hum once it gets to the second half. So it's going to be pretty important for not only the 49ers to get off the field on third down, like it says right here, but to keep them out of the red zone, because once they get in the red zone, they do very well. And once teams get in the 49ers red zone, they also do very well. So really, I think it's going to come down to Nick Sorensen changing up the picture. You said Bosa's doubtful. He's probably not going to play, and we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I imagine it's going to be, hey, let's see if we can get by the Bears with all the injuries that we have, and then come Thursday night in a divisional showdown, we're going to see all hands on deck from Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, and like all the other injured guys. But in this situation, I think having a guy like Hufanga back there, back in the fold, is going to go a long way for the 49ers. He's listed as questionable, but I assume he's going to play. After watching Jair Brown tackle in recent weeks, I would imagine he's going to have to play, but at the same time, like, people will remember Hufanga's tackling. So how to get Caleb Williams off his rocker, right? You're going to have to change the picture in the background. The 49ers don't really blitz, so Sorensen is going to have to revert back to, being creative. And that's not just running the same coverages over and over and over. And I think the Vikings had success doing that. So he's going to have to watch what the Vikings did. Obviously, they don't have Brian Flores, but you can take pages out of other teams' books.
Yeah, and much was said about Hufanga when he did return earlier in the season that, he didn't really look like himself either. But are you kind of at a point where Jair Brown's play is reached a level that you'd want Hufanga instead of Brown, right?
I think if anybody knows anything about Penn State football, Jair Brown is the epitome of Penn State football. He's really good for like 70, 80% of the time. But that one time in the biggest moment, just like Penn State football, in the biggest moment, they always come up short. In Jair Brown's case, it always seems like it goes the wrong way. So I think he is like a carbon copy of how you describe Penn State football to somebody. I think he's very good, but I think in this instance, like Hufanga, Caleb Williams will throw you the ball. It depends if you're going to catch it. The Vikings had 3 opportunities last week, a couple times. The Lions did as well. So he's going to give you a chance, and Hufanga is that type of playmaker. But he's playing with one hand, so they have a lot of decisions to make in this scenario.
Yeah, Penn State catching strays over here. But let's talk about the red zone defense of the 49ers. It's been a huge issue as of late, especially. They rank 31st in red zone score rate allowed in the last 3 games. 100% red zone touchdown rate to opponents. I think you posted about this too. Like their opponents' last 9 trips into the red zone have all converted for touchdowns. That is pretty bad. That's just something you can't allow to this Bears this Bears offense, right?
It's actually 11 to be fair to the other team.
11. That's wild. Yeah, that's absolutely wild. So that's something that, this Bears offense is still trying to figure things out. Like, there's no reason you should make it easy on them. Like, so that's what I'd be concerned with. And to your point too, earlier, that Caleb Williams has been more of a second half kind of guy. And I think the thing that concerns me with this game in particular is that the 49ers defense, even when they were doing a little bit better earlier in the season, they were a first half kind of team, and it would kind of all unravel in the second half. So that doesn't really play well into the 49ers' hands this week, seeing as how the Bears get more comfortable as the game goes on. Now, you also mentioned the turnover opportunities that are there, but the 49ers haven't really capitalized on this or have been able to generate any turnovers in recent weeks either. The defense ranks 28th in takeaways in their last 3 games, 0.3 average per game. So that's very, very low, right? Bears rank 5th in fewest giveaways per game. And in their last 3, they've been even better. So Caleb Williams, while there has been opportunities, maybe as you mentioned, like the Vikings did have chances, for the most part, he's been on the favorable end of, not putting the ball in harm's way, or at least the defenses just haven't been able to capitalize on that. I have a hard time thinking the 49ers are going to be able to in this game, but if they are going to win, they're going to have to.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And what I've noticed, and this is the case with most rookie quarterbacks, he's just a tick late. He's a half count late, half step late. And that's where the 49ers have to take advantage. If they're going to live in zone, Caleb Williams will give you an opportunity. It's just about, will the 49ers be a step ahead and will they be able to catch the ball? But at the same time, like, he's going to give his guys chances, and they make plays when he gives them chances. So it's going to be a lot of one-on-one opportunities down the field for guys like Diamador Lenore, for Renardo Green. So we're going to see how they play the ball in the air. And we're also going to get a chance to see how effective the safeties are.
And we didn't mention it, but Diamador Lenore is off of the injury report. He is slated to be back. That should be a boost for the defense for sure. But just this last stat to kind of highlight, the 49ers' inability to get turnovers, but also the offense not helping them out. Like the last 3 games, they are 32nd in turnover margin in the NFL, -2. So 49ers offense, generating the giveaways, which you don't want to do, and the defense not getting takeaways. So that's not a good recipe for success. And the other thing is, if you don't have pressure, you're going to find it hard to get quarterbacks in those situations where, they're throwing errantly or, they're uncomfortable. So that's been the biggest issue with Nick Bosa not in the picture. The pressure rate has fallen at 25.5%. That would rank 31st in the NFL over the course of the entire season. So that's been pretty bad. And I wouldn't expect this to really get better unless, like you say, KP, Nick Sorensen tries something different.
Yeah, and just watching what a Brian Flores team does, just watching what Aaron Glenn last night on the Lions, like, everybody's playing without their best players effectively. It's just a matter of how you're going to adapt. The issue that I've had with Sorensen over the past few weeks is, like, yes, we know Bosa's out, but you can't just plug another guy up. When it's next man up and you're replacing Nick Bosa, it can't just be next guy up. You have to find a way to muddy the picture for a guy like Caleb Williams. You have to be able to try to manufacture pressure, and he's really not doing that. Which is why, like, if I'm him this week, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at a rookie quarterback. I'm going to do anything and everything, and I'm going to go down swinging, knowing that I tried everything, not knowing that we did the same thing, didn't work again. It can't be that type of game for the defense.
I think on all sides of the ball, like, the 49ers need to lean into desperation, because that's where they're at. They need to be desperate. They need to be aggressive. And so trying to do the same thing over and over again, probably not going to work for them. Another thing that needs to get better for this 49ers defense is their rushing defense. It's been pretty bad all season, but, in recent weeks, it's been just atrocious, right? And a lot of that has had to do with, like, missed tackling as well. The defense ranks 30th in rush yards allowed per game over the last 3 weeks. They're averaging 161 rush yards allowed. They've given up 8 rushing touchdowns over the last 3 games, 6 to running backs, 2 to quarterbacks. Caleb Williams could use his legs as well, right? In the last 3 games, he's rushed for 70, 33, and 39 yards. So that'd be something that I'd be cautious of. if I'm the Bears, like I'm thinking of ways I could get Caleb Williams the ball in the red zone because the 49ers have shown like they're not going to be able to stop it.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues that I'd have, watching this game on third downs if the 49ers elect to go man coverage is Williams running and picking up the first down. So not even limited to the red zone. What evidence do we have of this defense stopping a mobile quarterback in the past few years? It's been one of their biggest Achilles heels. And in a game where the Bears are pretty productive through the air, like if they want to be, at least they're trending in the right way is the better way to put it. Maybe this is where not having DJ Moore allows you to run more zone. So we'll see how healthy he is. We'll see how Sorensen feels about the matchups, but I'd want all eyes on Caleb Williams, and I'd want to make sure that, man coverage is going to be easier for him to pick out the matchups, and that's not going to be the case with zone. So again, it's going to be about Sorensen mixing everything up. So we'll see if he's capable of that.
And, just to know as well, we mentioned DeAndre Swift dealing with the quad injury and their backup running back, Roschon Johnson, out for this game. So that could play a part. Like they are going to be a little thinner at running back. But, yeah, the 49ers going to have to do something to breathe some life into their defense this week if they have any chance of winning this game. Well, let's take a look at the Bears defense because, in my opinion, I think a lot of people would come to the assumption that the Bears as a whole are just not a very good team. And I get it. Like they have a bad record, but their defense really isn't that bad. And they have some pretty nice playmakers here. They have Montez Sweat on the defensive line, the couple corners, Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, that are pretty good. Jonathan Owens and Kevin Byard is, their safeties, TJ Edwards, Edmonds, and Sanborn, their linebackers. So it's a solid group, and, they generate turnovers as well as mentioned. So that's something I'd be a little cautious of for the 49ers offense to not really let their guard down against the Bears defense.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And when we're talking about a team that's going to have, multiple backup offensive linemen playing, the last thing you want to do is take Montez Sweat lightly. And I would imagine the Bears, just try to come after Brock Purdy because everybody's tried to do that. And at the same time, I would imagine, and I don't want to sound like a dirty player, but they're probably going to come after Brock Purdy just because he's hurt. So ramp up the pressure. And that's where in the counter for Shanahan should be to see more screens, right? So I think this is an area for the 49ers offense to get right because I think they're going to run a lot of zone. And I think that means good news for Deebo Samuel because he can just kind of spot up. And that also means good news for Juwan Jennings because he can eat over the middle of the field. So the matchups do bode well in this sense for the 49ers. But again, I don't know what the Bears are going to do or how they're going to attack, but they've been very sloppy tackling wise too as of late.
Yeah, that is good to know. And another thing, like as a whole, like the Bears have been sloppy with is penalties too. Like they're penalized almost as much as the 49ers. So that could bode well. Whatever team is, maybe plays the cleanest will give themselves a better chance. But this season, the Bears defense are 5th in third down conversion rate allowed. But 49ers offense hasn't been that bad. They actually ranked 7th in third downs, and the Bears defense ranked 6th in takeaways per game. That's the big one because, as I mentioned, the 49ers have not been good in giveaways right now. They are turning the ball over at a crazy rate, and that has been one of the Achilles heel of the 49ers offense and why we've seen them struggling so much. So, yeah, it's just something to be cautious of. But there are a couple of matchups that I do like for the 49ers. You mentioned a couple, right? Like Deebo, Juwan Jennings could get cooking with some zone. I do think that for Kittle to have the reaction that he did against, the Bills in the post game, right? For him to say, I do not have an explanation. I felt pretty open multiple times in response to him having just 2 targets in that game.
He's open all the time against everybody. Like, what are we doing, man?
Exactly. So I'm thinking that this might be a week of some overcorrection for the 49ers where they make it a point to get George Kittle the football. And I think they'd be pretty smart to do so, not just because Kittle is frustrated, because, the dude gets open and he's done great things when he does get the ball this season for much of it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking this is a favorable for George Kittle to have some dominance again if the 49ers, plan to use him. The Bears defense have been okay against tight ends. Against the Lions the week prior, they gave up 2 touchdowns to Sam Laporta. And so that could be an opportunity for the 49ers. George Kittle up there as well. In 2024, inside the opponent's 10-yard line, Kittle leads all tight ends in receptions, targets, touchdowns. More of that, please.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. When you said overcorrection, that is great. That is exactly what you want. So in that game that I was watching, TJ Hawkinson, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 114 yards. TJ Hawkinson, solid player. TJ Hawkinson, not George Kittle. So like there's really no reason. When you talk about overcorrection, I could not imagine going into a game where, hey, like if I don't win this, we're not going to be playing any more than 17 games this season, or I'm not going down swinging with George Kittle. So it should look a lot like that stat line where I just said about Hawkinson. Like if he gets 10 targets, 9, 10, 8, whatever it is, he's going to have a good game. Like there, when you throw George Kittle the ball, good things happen. So maybe Shanahan waits to use him or to like really spam him targets once they do get into the red zone. But there needs to be a plan to get Kittle involved somehow, some way.
Yep, I agree. And I think Purdy and Kyle would be smart to target that man, because I do think like it's on both of them, right? To get him the football. And so manufacture some touches for that guy, because he is going to make you look good for it. All right, another favorable, and this one may be a little surprising because it's like, hey, the 49ers don't have Christian McCaffrey. They don't have Jordan Mason anymore. What are you left with? Isaac Guerendo, who rookie, right? Like we haven't seen too much of him. He's only had 42 attempts this season, but I do feel like this is a good spot for him. And I do think, as Kyle said, like he's gotten better as time has gone on. And I think we're going to see that in these closing games for the 49ers. 246 rush yards this season, 5.9 yards per attempt. That ranks 7th among all running backs. 2 rushing touchdowns, but as we know, he could have had a couple more that he knelt for smartly in a couple of those games. 5 runs of 10 or more yards, plus 5.9 rush EPA. That is 9th among all running backs. 9.5% explosive rate, 21% missed tackle rate, 5 yards after contact per carry. That ranks 3rd amongst running backs. So I think what we've seen from Isaac Guerendo is enough to want to see more. I know there's going to be some mistakes that he makes, maybe more so on alignment things, pass protection. That's probably to be expected. But I think he can run the football, and his speed is going to pay off. And I think we see an explosive run or two from him in this game alone.
Yeah, when you talk about a rookie, when you talk about a first-year runner, it would be weird if he wasn't making mistakes, right? Like we were critiquing him early in the season, like, hey, he's running up the offensive line's backs, he's missing cutbacks. Well, like he's a day 3 pick. He's not going to hit the ground running like that. So Shanahan, they kind of talked about how he's getting more comfortable the more he plays. Shocker, crazy how that works. So if you just kind of see how the Bears have been this past couple of weeks, Detroit ran for 194 yards, they averaged 5.9 yards a carry, and they had 7 rushes of at least 10 yards. And I think that's important when we're talking about Guerendo, who is a big play threat, who's proven, honestly, every time they give him the ball, he's good for at least one 10-yard rush. But that wasn't the only team that had success. Just going back and looking, the Vikings ran for 124 yards. They had 4 10-plus yards rush. Aaron Jones had 79 yards after contact. And then going back to that, the Packers game, they had 4 rushes of at least 10 yards, and they ran over 100 yards. So Ben Bartch is back, and I think he's an upgrade. I would say that he's addition by subtraction over Aaron Banks. And then if you could just, do what you keep doing, right? Run the ball, don't give up on it. The Bears have been, I mentioned how sloppy they've been tackling wise. They've missed 25 tackles in the past 3 games. So if you get them in space, you make them tackle one-on-one, you'll have the ability to have the big play. So if Guerendo just honestly keeps doing what he does, I think the 49ers are going to have a lot more success than we've seen in recent weeks on offense.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I don't think that's crazy at all, especially, yeah, like the Bears defense haven't been the greatest against the run. So I think the 49ers should continue to run it, especially because I think it would be easy for the Bears to think, oh, well, they're reverting to a rookie running back now. They don't have their top two guys. They're probably going to want to pass more. It is a good opportunity, I think, for the 49ers, Kyle, to be like psych and just run it and see what Isaac Guerrero could do, because I do think he has that home run ability, and that could pay off in this game. So the Bears this season, 29th in rushing yards per attempt allowed, 4.9. And as I said, Guerrero has been pretty good and very efficient on the ground. So I'm sure he can average about 5 yards per carry in this one as well. 25th.
He always falls
rushing
forward too, which is like a pretty big deal.
That-
So when you're talking about running backs, one of his strengths that once he does get beyond the line of scrimmage, Guerrero does a really good job of falling forward.
Yeah, which comes into play with some of those stats that I mentioned too, right? Him just having the 5 yards after contact per carry. I think that definitely has to do with that as well. Bears are 25th in rushing yards allowed per game. KP just mentioned some of those stats. Since week 8, it feels like it's gotten even worse for them. Second highest yards per carry on zone runs allowed. Third most rush yards per game allowed since week 8. Sixth highest explosive run rate. Seventh highest rushing success rate allowed on zone runs. So again, like, this just feels like Guerrero could have a lot of success here in his, very first start.
Yeah, and again, I think the 49ers will trade some of the down-to-down inefficiency for the 20-yard run, the 30-yard run, or the explosive run that goes even further than that. So he is in a really good spot. And the one thing that may work in their favor, I love that stat right there that says the Bears they allow the second highest yards per carry against zone runs. So that's really all they used Guerrero on. They were more of a mix and match scheme-wise with Mason and obviously McCaffrey, but all they really used, I think it's like an 8-2 or 7-3 split when it comes to zone runs versus like gap schemes. So it should work out in Guerrero's favor.
I wouldn't even rule out seeing a little bit of Patrick Taylor in this game, and I don't think he's been that bad either when he's gotten a couple of opportunities. So
I think he's going to be the third down back.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. So yeah, we'll probably see a mix of those guys. It'll probably be a little bit more until we see Izzy Abanikanda getting some more snaps, just because he just joined the team. But excited to see what he can do as well. Now, guys, make sure that you guys check out Niners Nation. KP has his latest preview on this matchup. On there, it's called 49ers Bears Preview. It's now or never for Kyle Shanahan and the offense to get right. Now, KP, how confident are you feeling about this game?
I think the 49ers are going to have a good bit of success offensively, honestly. And it's going to come down to whether they can convert in the red zone, right? If they're settling for field goals, if the field goal kicker makes his field goals, that matters as well. But just the way that the Bears play defense, I think, I don't want to say they're passive, but we've seen what teams who like physical teams and what they do to the 49ers, how they can kind of master physicality. I don't watch the Bears and think that they're that. I actually think they're more of the older, slowish, and struggling one-on-ones. Like, those are the type of teams that the 49ers have success against. And those are the type of teams that the 49ers break big plays against. So for as much as, most people, myself included, have been dogging Debo these past few weeks, I really think it's a good spot for him to bounce back. I am fascinated to see, like, what's up with Ricky Pearsall, man, because I was watching him and obviously it's a snow game, but it looked like they've nenever stepped foot in the snow before. They could not keep their feet for the life of them. It was rough.
So embarrassing.
Yeah,
and
there was.
Now you've gone to a number of 49er games, have reported at them and all that. Do you get the sense, because I do you get the sense that the 49ers are less prepared in games where they have to wear different cleats?
Oh, I don't think that's even arguable, right? I think if you just go back, the past 5 games are all the same. And last week was wild. I feel like I could pull 10 plays off the top of my head whether it's Pearsall, whether it's one of the other wide receivers,
like Evan Anderson
Debo is tiptoeing on his routes because he doesn't want to fall. There's nothing you can do as a play caller or a quarterback when that's how your receivers are running routes. So when I'm looking at these past few weeks, of the 49ers and how they've been on offense, like it comes with like a giant asterisk because like they're not running their routes full speed. So what do you expect Shanahan or Purdy to do?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it was a little unfair for Baldy to to go and say like Ricky Pearsall has disappeared. Where is he? Again,
That
like
was so exaggerated.
it's so exaggerated. I was like, okay, let's cool it a little bit. Because I have seen Pearsall get open, and I think that game in Buffalo, everyone struggled, right? And maybe Kittle didn't because to his account, he was open quite a lot, but those other guys, a lot of guys were slipping. So I definitely saw that, definitely impacted them. And again, this game being back in Santa Clara, I do think we see the offense get a little closer to the version from a couple weeks ago. But the question is that still going to be enough? You got this defense giving up a ton of points these last couple of weeks as well. And yeah, I just know the offense has to score more than 10 points.
Yeah, and I want to see how the defense does, right? I want to see – it goes without saying, like the offense, they have to get off the mat. They haven't done much since the Seattle game, and it just seems like they've lost a lot of their identity. I don't blame them. They don't have Brandon Ayuk. They don't have Christian McCaffrey. They haven't had Trent Williams. They're missing a lot of players. So you'd think by now Shanahan has an idea like, hey, I'm going to lean so heavily on my two best weapons, George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, and I'm going to sprinkle in Debo with the trick plays, with whatever it takes to get him involved. That way, I can move down the field. And once I do get in the red zone, I have a weapon that nobody has proven that they can stop. Any possession in the red zone where Kittle doesn't get a target is a possession wasted in my mind. And maybe it is Garendo that is going to be the one to move the ball in between the 20s. Maybe it is Juwan Jennings. I don't think that's really the worry. The worry is like, who are you going to lean on when it comes time to score? And I mean, the answer is so obvious that it drives me nuts when I'm watching them and you see run on the middle on first down, slant on second down to Debo, screen because it's 3rd and 13, and now you can't run your regular offense. Just throw the ball to Kittle, man. It's so simple to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you your score prediction for this game. Now, I'm also going to tell you this. The Bears are 0-5 on the road this season, one of 2 teams without a road win this season. We already talked about the impact of, feeling good that you let go of a head coach that was frankly holding them back.
Which is very real, by the way.
It is. It absolutely is. So I think they're going to come in with a different mindset. So maybe that stat means a little bit less, but thought I'd throw it out there. Have you thought of a score prediction for this game?
So obviously Eberflus, like he made a monumental mistake at the end of the game, but there are other players on the field who can also call timeouts. So I don't know why we're acting like there was nobody else who made mistakes. Again, if you watch the Bears, like they are also an unbuttoned organization who makes a lot of mistakes. And throughout the course of a game, I think it goes without saying, a team that lost a game due to a Hail Mary is probably not the most disciplined team out there. So they're going to make their fair share of mistakes. And I don't think that's going to stop on the road. They've done it all season. Just because they got rid of a head coach doesn't mean it's going to stop. There's been a lot of calls and a lot of talks about, the promotion of Thomas Brown. I don't think they've changed that much, honestly. And their offense is still middle of the pack in the 3 games since he's been the offensive coordinator. And it's not like he's faced the best teams. I know the Lions are a good team, but we saw how their defense looked last night and how they've looked in most games. So I actually really like the 49ers offense in this situation. I don't know what to expect from the defense just because I don't know if Sorensen's going to do anything different. It's week 14. Like, what has he done different? He hasn't shown me any reason that he's going to change. So I feel like it's kind of fool's gold wishing that you're going to see anything different. So I do think the 49ers are going to score, though, and I do think the Bears are going to throw up on themselves at the end of the game. So I'm going to go 26-23. Wow. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of points. I think it's going to be a very entertaining watch from the standpoint of if you enjoy points. If you like defense, probably not your game. So 26-23 Niners, they keep the season alive. And on Thursday, we're talking about the potential of, hey, Williams and Bosa and all those guys coming back.
That's crazy. Now, I have a hard time with this 49ers team because as of late, like it just looks much of the season, it looks like they're capable of losing to anyone. So while a couple of weeks ago, I was like, yeah, this is probably a game, they're definitely win. After having seen these last 2 games, and granted, those were against good teams, it just looks like they're disinterested. So I have a hard time kind of gauging them. I do think the 49ers will look very good in the first half. I think they'll have some points up. They'll go into halftime with the lead. But I think in the second half, things will start to unravel as it has for them, not just like outside of these 2 games, right? It snowballed much earlier than the half. But games before that, like I'm talking fourth quarter collapses, I think we can definitely see something like that in this game, especially because look, the very real possibility that the Bears are just a little more excited to play for someone else this week. Now, we know that eventually will probably fizzle out for them, right? That usually happens, but you can't ignore that in this game, the first week with interim head coach, they'll probably feel good. So I do think they'll actually be able to make a comeback in the second half. And I have the Bears winning this one. I hate it.
Yeah.
I
What's
do.
the score?
19-13.
Oh, so you think it's going to be an ugly one, right?
I think it'll be ugly. I think it'll be ugly for both teams. But like I said, I do think the 49ers the offense will look better, but I have concerns about the defense in this game, especially against a quarterback who can use his legs as well. I think we see a couple of back-breaking plays from the defense in this one.
I think you're right, but I think there's going to be so many on both sides that leads to more points.
It could, yeah. Ultimately, you have the 49ers winning. I have them losing. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it'd be great if the 49ers could get back in the win column just for pride purposes. Right. So hopefully they can get something going. This would be the game to do it. But KP, thank you for joining me again. Good to have you back. Thanks everyone that tuned in. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Like I said, make sure to check out KP's preview article on Niners Nation. The link to that is in the description of this video and this podcast. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, have a good rest of your Friday and good weekend, folks. Peace.